You got your intelligence and you got your corruption.
Okay.
And you got a lot of people with a lot of power in the private sector, in the public sector,
Okay.
talking a lot about intelligence and talking a lot about corruption.
Okay.
And they say, "Oh, this is the greatest form of, and this is an intelligent. It's an intelligent market. It's an artificial intelligence. We have an intelligent design for our automobile. It's a smart car. It's all this intelligence."
We have such a thing as smart water. If you drink water, you get smarter. It says smart water on the outside.
Mike, add it to my list, submit it in discovery to evidence. There it is.
Okay.
Put it on the list. And on the other hand, you have a lot of corruption talk.
Okay.
The corruption, the bribe they're paying off, it's nothing, the valuation, the government, the USAID, whatever it is.
Sure.
Corruption.
Yeah.
And obviously there's in reality, whatever that means, through my subjectivity, granted, there is intelligence. There's things that I say, oh, that's intelligent, that's smart. I look at it, or I defer to people. I'm like, oh, well, this person is a domain expert in some subject, and I listen. I'm like, oh, I could probably learn something from this person who knows this intelligent thing about something.
Okay.
And I also have a point of view on what I think is corruption, whatever that may be, right? Fraud,
okay.
A rip off, a scam, whatever.
Okay.
And you and everybody else, I'm sure if I walked through 300 million Americans and I said, can you tell me, define intelligence or give me an example of something intelligent, most people could give me some example. And if I said, define corruption, give me an example of corruption, most people could also, again, give me an example.
Okay.
But my issue is that I feel like your example of intelligence or my example of intelligence or whoever, the next 300 million people's example of either one, they tend to vary. In fact, they vary significantly. So what you think is intelligent is not necessarily what I think is intelligent, or what you think is corrupt is not necessarily what I think is corrupt, or what you think is smart. You get my point. You see where I'm going.
Yes.
And so my question is, who decides? Who is to decide? So because what I'm really, when you start to consolidate, and the president of the United States or the head investigator for the attorney general's office in New York or whoever the arbiter is, and they say this is corrupt, or the shareholder meeting for whatever, and we're raising $1 bajillion million, and we say it's because of the intelligent design. Aren't we getting ourselves into trouble when we collectively, when we get into groupthink, basically, and we say, oh, well, this isn't the groupthink applies its obedience to your definition of intelligence, or the obvious would be Sam Altman's definition of it, or the other AI companies. That would be the most obvious, but there's all these layers, right? Or what's a smart car? What's smart water? Or similarly, aren't we getting into the same issue when I take a singular authority's definition of corruption? I just feel like there's room for a lot of abuse and problems and misallocation of resources and I feel like there's a lot of risk developing through the consolidation of the point of view as to what is risk and what is corrupt. Because I think it's risky, and it's making me uncomfortable.
Okay, so I'm not 100% sure that I'm following you, but I think what is intelligent is something that is, I don't know if we can define that. I think that's pretty subjective, and it should be pretty subjective. I have met incredibly intelligent people that are incapable of carrying a conversation, incapable of running a business, incapable of doing really anything. And then I've met in insanely competent people that I don't feel are that intelligent, but they're just they're able to visualize things, and they're able to get things done. And so are they intelligent? Sure. Different kind of intelligence. I don't think intelligence is measured by IQ necessarily. So I think intelligence is much more subjective. I think corruption is less subjective because we have laws. I mean, you can't just say something is corrupt. Sure, I shouldn't say you can't. You can say anything you want.
That's my whole point. But my point is, you'll throw both of these words around like Like it's like just because I paid too much for my tuna sandwich at the coffee shop, that I'm like, oh, this is a corrupt operation. They're charging $10 for bananas.
Sure. Well, I mean, I'm not sure that they forced you to buy that tuna sandwich, but sure. I mean, I understand that. I'm not sure that that's truly the definition of corruption.
I don't think
um,
it is, but my point is, obviously for me, it's not, it's obviously not. My point is, it gets used, that we're allowing the use of the word corruption and intelligence in a way that is making both words meaningless.
because I think people are using the term corruption. It's become a very popular term recently. It's never been a popular term in the U.S. as far as politics goes, because it just has never had a home here, because we actually have, um, uh, the rule of law, and we have it's pretty well defined. But I think that um, people have used it to kind of make a case, because it's such a crappy word that you can say something is corrupt without having to actually prove that it's corrupt. I mean, anybody can say, I can say Dylan Ratigan is corrupt. Okay, what the hell does that mean? Like who, Tom Sosnoff is corrupt. Tasty is corrupt. I mean,
Illinois is corrupt.
Illinois is corrupt. I mean, what the hell does that mean? It doesn't. I don't even know what that means. Like, it's so ridiculous. So I'm not sure
But
why
don't you think it's more common than ever? I just feel like it's
it.
become a plague of these words upon our lives,
Well,
both
it's
ways.
become the reason it's more common than ever is it's become a rallying cry of the current. You know, it's become a rallying cry to justify what's currently going on, with this new administration. It's basically, we're getting rid of the corruption is a very easy way to explain why they're basically cutting a lot of
Anything.
anything that they can cut, they're cutting. And the answer to every question is, we're getting rid of the corruption. And so it's a great way you can repeat it, so every yin yang in the world can say, well, when you question, 2 million kids are going to starve to death. Well, we got rid of the corruption. We'll rebuild it some other way, like that kind of thing. Yeah, I don't.
But you don't think intelligence is being degraded in the same way that corruption is, where everything's intelligent and everything is smart and all this jazz?
Well, the one thing I would say is that one thing people have to realize about artificial intelligence, which is what's on, the top of
The front of the paper.
the front of the paper, is that artificial intelligence, the biggest challenge we have with artificial intelligence, and anybody that works in the area of artificial intelligence will tell you, the biggest challenge is that it's not that AI doesn't have the potential to be intelligent. It's that AI doesn't know, can't separate the difference from right or wrong. Like, so AI can think it's being intelligent because it's been fed so much information that it can spit out a lot of information, and you have to figure out, because it's not perfect. AI is very imperfect, and you have to figure out what is right, what is intelligent, and what it just spits out that's wrong. And the biggest challenge, and what scares people the most about AI, is the amount of mistakes that it makes, because its ability to be kind of it's impossible for it to be perfect, and the cost of getting it close to perfect is still a little outrageous. So it is less than perfect, and sorting through those imperfections is what makes AI, so dangerous sometimes. I mean, could it be a huge help? Sure, of course. Nobody's arguing that. But AI is not perfect, and it makes a lot of mistakes. And how do you eliminate those mistakes? That's what everybody's challenged with right now. So, and I think that, using the term intelligence, that's a very dangerous term. Especially, it
Bingo.
depends how you it
Bingo.
depends how you apply it. If you apply it in politics, it's incredibly dangerous, because you have some politicians that are that I would argue that are incredibly dull. dull in an IQ sense. And, and then you have people that are not elected politicians that are making comments, statements, and whatever, and people that are a little bit on the dull side are trying to, are trying to validate those other things. It's a little bit scary. Like the example I gave before.
Now you're talking my language. Now you see why I'm nervous. I couldn't sleep last night trying to.
Well, I was when we were preparing for the show today, I gave Josh an example of an example of what I was, how you can interpret this different ways. Like yesterday, there was a photo op where you had Elon Musk standing behind Trump or standing next to Trump.
Yeah.
Yeah. You saw it with his son
with
on
the
his
kid
head,
and all
whatever.
This,
yeah. Now, if you just go backwards a little bit, okay, just go back a year and imagine George Soros standing behind Joe Biden with a grandkid picking his nose there, you would have had World War III, like what the hell is going on? That would not have been considered intelligent. That was not an exercise in intelligence if that was the case, a year ago. But yet all of a sudden, when somebody else that's clearly
is running
an
aligned billionaire in the administrative office
exactly.
in public,
then all of a sudden that's the new definition of intelligence? I don't think so. So I think we have to be super careful here of how much credit or how much validation we give to certain things. I mean, when it's exposed, that intelligence is a high school graduate that's running, the department.
You're talking about big balls?
Yeah. I'm just saying, but when that's what you find out, you're like, that's not really. I'm trying to think of what the there's so many good comedic examples, but But the thing that comes to mind, top of mind for me, is everything always goes back to Seinfeld, but there's an old Seinfeld reference where Kramer was, I don't know if you saw this one, but Kramer was learning karate and he was winning left and right every single time. And then they found out that he was fighting 8-year-olds, so they're like,
and he's like prancing around like a rooster, like Mr. Big.
Right. And so, so yes, he's a great fighter, but he's beating 8-year-olds, okay, that are a third of his size. And it's almost like the same thing here. We're experiencing it in real time. We're sitting here and, we're impressing the 8-year-olds. Let's put it that way. So I understand the discussion of intelligence and corruption. I think.
Well, I'm just talking about the broader thought. Sorry to interrupt you. Is when you overuse a word, any word, efficiency, beauty, evil, whatever, that the word loses all meaning. Because its utilization is so broad, that it becomes a meaningless statement.
Yeah.
What is, and I feel like we're because of the excessive use of both words, that they're being used as political or marketing words, basically, either a marketing word or a political organizing tool. And in the process are losing all meaning. And people can say, oh, well, it's just a word, who cares? But when words lose meaning, then the ability to communicate becomes degraded, and then the integrity, which is our favorite word, whether it's the integrity of the financial markets, the integrity of the government, the integrity of the data, the integrity of the dollar, blah, 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 that integrity is protected by the validity of words. And if words lose their meaning, then integrity is at risk. That's what I guess the thought that I was having.
I agree with you. And I also think that we have to be careful, because intelligence and the misuse of the term intelligence, the misuse of the term corruption, you have to realize that the world is a better place, not necessarily because there's waste, but because there's culture, because there's fairness, because there is compassion, because people that the haves have to give something back to the have-nots. And anytime you have the haves who decide to cut out the have-nots altogether, that's when everything breaks apart. That's the let them eat cake.
And the logic of cutting out whoever the other, whatever the other may be, is, well, that's the intelligent thing to do because that process is corrupt. Right? Intelligence and corruption are the two foundational words that are justifying all sorts of resource allocation.
It's spending money on culture is not a waste. That's our history. Spending money to make sure the world's a better place is not a waste. Spending money on a gold-plated toilet seat is a waste. All right. But spending money to make sure that people can eat, that we can learn, that we, that we are basically incubating the next generation of smart people, and that culturally we're not just void of any culture whatsoever. These are all super important things that work to build our ecosystem, that make us what we are. And we have to be very careful that we don't strip that all out just for the benefit of trying to say, hey, we don't need to strip all that out just to justify a tax cut or something like that.
But the interesting thing where you're, and I don't disagree with where you're sort of bumping up against this, the manipulation or degradation of the words intelligence and corruption, but where you're going to is whether something is deemed to be intelligent or corrupt is secondary, or at least is adjacent. I don't know if it's secondary, but it probably is secondary to whether something is right or wrong. Like, you're basically saying there's a moral compass, and that just because something is something is intelligent doesn't mean it's not illegal, or I could say it's intelligent to steal your credit card number, and not it's more why work when I can steal everybody's credit card number and have more money than I would ever make working.
Well,
that's intelligent.
I'll give you a better example. You take somebody that professes to make a ton of money. Listen, I make $1 billion a year, somebody like that, and yet I don't pay any taxes. Or I own this company, and the company makes $10 billion a year. But we don't pay any taxes. Like, that just is an example.
And that's intelligent. That's an example of intelligence.
Yeah, it's an example of intelligence, not ethical responsibility.
And so I guess the point that you're making, which I don't disagree with, which is that that you can use the words intelligence and corruption to justify things that are immoral. To say it most very simply.
Yeah.
I can claim that I'm being intelligent, or I can claim that you're being corrupt, whoever the third counterparty is, in order to justify any moral position that I want. Yeah. Or whatever moral position is convenient for me in that moment.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's that's dangerous. And that's what makes makes things unfair. And that's what challenges convention. And that is when society gets dangerous, it's combustible. And that's the scary thing. And again, I want to go back and just emphasize on this AI stuff, because I think people get confused thinking that AI is going to, solve everything. And it's not, because it can't be trusted 100%. We're never going to get there. And you can't blame it. So, because it's not.
But do you
liable.
think we're going to get to a world? Have you met anybody yet who generally who's making decisions where they're like, oh, I don't know who to go on a date with, or I don't know what clothing to wear, personal decisions? Have you met anybody that uses artificial intelligence that they're like, I'm going to ask ChatGPT which girl I should go out with, or because I've met a couple of people in Los Angeles who are like literally asking Chat GPT these questions that are, one, totally subjective, two, generally unanswerable, and three, there is no right answer. Like, I don't know which, like,
No.
what
The
should I
only
have,
thing,
chicken or beef? Like, what do you feel like? I don't know what to tell you. Like, how can ChatGPT tell you whether you should have the salmon or the pasta? Like, what are we doing? But my
I,
point is that the fact that it was even happening was shocking to me, and it did make me wonder whether, as we move into the future, with, like, imagine there's a baby born just in the last few months. Okay, I don't know if you can have that, conjure the thought, but imagine, and that this baby now is coming of age, and not just the area of the eye. We all like, oh, the baby's 1 year old on the iPad, and they can use the iPad. We've all seen this. Well, now it's a 5 year old, and you're like, well, do you want macaroni and cheese, little Johnny, or do you want to have chicken fingers? And they're like, let me ask Chat GPT, what do I want? And it didn't even occur to me that that's something that I would never, you and I would never imagine consulting. I might say to you, hey, what do you think's better, Tom, the chicken or the fish, or whatever? You'd be like, oh, get the fish. They got a thing, whatever. But, like, I'm not going to ask ChatGPT, but my point is that I actually believe it's possible that there's a total deference to artificial intelligence for all decision making.
well, yeah, I mean, when kids start growing up and they don't believe their parents and they ask ChatGPT, or they say something to the effect of, who should I listen to, mom or dad, based on the following, yeah, it's
or like my father says that it's good that I should start working when I'm young to get a good work ethic and blah, blah, blah. And then the kid's like, well, I asked ChatGPT, and ChatGPT says it's abusive to make a 14-year-old mow the lawn.
Uh-huh. Welcome. This is going to be one of the challenges.
I mean, I just think that that's really what's in the cards. I think it creates and you're like, well, who's smarter, my father or all of the.
Yeah, but the funny thing for me is that I don't actually think that that's a negative. I just think we have to take it in, we just have to accept it for what it is. I think it's all a positive. Like, I don't think there's any negatives there. I just think, you use it to complement. You don't use it. It's not primary. It's complementary. And that's how I think ChatGPT will be on a personal level. On a business level, I think it will be an enormous help intelligence-wise, but it makes error. It makes mistakes. It has errors. It spits out false information, and it is challenged in that sense. So you can't take everything, I mean, just ask it about Dylan Ratigan, and you'll see. It's not hard.
No, I get it.
See the mistakes.
The biggest issue is the use of intelligence and corruption as a way to circumvent any sort of moral code.
Yeah,
we're seeing there's examples of it.
Right.
That's like the most meaningful part of this discussion, really.
Yeah. You're right.
And then it's easy to assign it to the presidency because for all the things, not just this president, but all the political leadership, it's common to these sort of what I'll say is quickly tossed off or frivolous accusations of intelligence or corruption. I'm more intrigued in a sense by whether, if we assign intelligence if ChatGPT says it's intelligent to not pay your taxes. In other words, I just wonder the degree to which that because ChatGPT only has the moral instincts of its programming, I guess. I mean, I don't even know how that integrates. Ultimately, it just seems that artificial intelligence, obviously the primary risk of artificial intelligence is that it is amoral and that it empowers people's negative desires for each other. That's why. The only why worry about artificial intelligence. Why? Because it's amoral and it may give people's negative intent more horsepower, because just because I'm here, I don't like Tom Sosnoff. He gave me a bad cup of coffee, but I'm not gonna. But then I go to my artificial intelligence and I'm like, make Tom Sosnoff's life a misery. Figure out the best way to do it. That's actually more concerning for me.
Yeah, that's not as concerning to me. The reason that we bring it up in the current context is because in the current context of this president and this administration is because they have brought the the whole AI discussion right into the White House, because you've got, on the one hand,
corruption and intelligence is at the table in the room.
I mean, they basically brought it in there. They're mixing business and pleasure, or they're mixing business and business. And what you have is, if you have Elon Musk standing next to you, and if Elon Musk bidding, $100 billion to buy OpenAI, then you've mixed it up, and there's clearly conflicts. Now, of course, they're not going to sell it and that kind of thing, but there are absolutely conflicts. And so you brought it there. It's not us bringing it there. They brought it there. And that's a dangerous, that's another dangerous thing. Where's the line between, business and politics and business and pleasure and everything else? So anyway, that's why
the other argument, the counter argument would be that that's always been like, there's always been a billionaire next to the president tweaking his ear. It's just always been in secret. And at least now it's being done in public, would be the counter argument to that specific concern.
Yeah, I don't think
that George Soros or whoever, Bill Gates, whoever's been lurking in the shadows. And for the first time, we're bringing it out into the light.
Yeah. That's a stretch, but sure.
That's not going to get you over the hill. With transparency is not going to cut it.
I mean, yeah, yes, that's a revisionist history. It's a stretch.
How about the utopian vision, which is by reducing corruption, whatever that means, and by increasing intelligence, whatever that means, that you're going to have a streamlined government that pays lower rates and borrows less money, and an economy that is more prosperous.
Yeah.
Because it's less corrupt and more intelligent, just to take the other side.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I get it. I get it. I'm not sure that it's necessarily more intelligent, and I would hope that it's less corrupt, but sure.
To counter myself, something can only be as intelligent or corrupt or whatever it is as the people asserting intelligence and corruption are moral. Which, going back to the central point, so to the degree to which it's a moral arbiter of intelligence and corruption, then perhaps that utopian vision is possible. But the degree to which the people asserting intelligence and corruption are immoral, it becomes a recipe for a catastrophe. That the intelligence and corruption are only as good as the moral compass of the perpetrator thereof.
There's nobody opposed to efficiency, and there's nobody opposed to true intelligence, because anything that generates efficiency, meaning anything that eliminates the inefficiencies in the system, makes it better for all consumers, and we are consumers. And that means on the tax side, that means on the revenue side, salary side, that means on the purchase side. So yes, anything that is better for consumers, which means efficiency. I actually wrote about this last weekend. That's what we all want.
And so the only question is whether I believe you, whoever you are, whether you're a CEO or the president, genuinely have the moral fiber to assert it, or are you just using it as a marketing word?
That is exactly right. Do we have the moral fiber to assert it, to protect it, and to scale it? And that is a huge question. And there is where you have to that's the part that becomes, that's the part that voters have to answer. That's the part that, everybody's got to try to figure out. And that's what makes this country so divided. Because half this country feels like, no, they do not have the moral or ethical fiber to lead this, and the other half of the country feels, oh, they're the perfect people to do this, and therein lies the challenge.
Mm-hmm. Do you see a path to resolution, or you're going to sit back and wait with everybody else to see what happens?
Well, first of all, I don't think we have a choice. I don't see a path to resolution under the current under the current circumstances with the current people. I don't see any path to resolution. I think eventually the signs are there that yes, this will become automated, efficient, helpful, and it will be ultimately scalable. I don't see that right now. I think we'll see that in the future.
Does that make you a techno-utopian, even if it's a bumpy road getting there?
I'm a technical positive drift person.
Meaning that technology, because of positive drift, will ultimately work for the benefit of mankind.
That's right. That's right. The one thing I've learned about mankind is that the grifters get sorted out and they get shot down. They end up dead, or they end up basically being useless. And so it doesn't matter. You can only grift for so long, and everybody gets exposed, and everybody gets terminated in one way or another. And so that's the good thing about mankind.
The different variable right now that gives me concern, and I think a lot of people, probably you too, is I agree generally with what you're saying, but the different variable right now is extreme outcomes are more possible more quickly now on a more broad basis. So the ability to do a lot of really good things for a lot of people very quickly is the highest it has ever been. And the ability to do a lot of bad things to a lot of people very quickly is also the highest it has ever been. Somebody wrote a great article talking about how in the era of extremes, that the most likely future outcome is either an extreme positive or an extreme negative, not because of any preference for the positive or the negative, but because there's always a preference for both. But we're at a moment where the ability to express the preference is more empowered than it ever has been because of technology. And so that's why we perceive both incredible, it's easy to perceive incredible abundant futures as well as incredible catastrophic futures at the same time.
Yeah, because there's a lot of articles and there's a lot of discussion that essentially say, if you think AI is dangerous now, just wait.
Right. Or if you think AI is powerful now, just wait.
Just wait. Yeah, you have no idea what's coming next. And the issue behind this is that instead of just smart people, building stuff like the people that might have built stuff at Apple or places like that, whatever in the past, now you have a certain, as they like to call them, the tech elite. There's and they're not and they don't have and they don't feel like they have any downside because they're not millionaires, they're not billionaires, they're 100 plus billion, 100, they have hundreds of billions of dollars. Hundreds of billions of dollars. So it's the modern day tech elite that hold the keys to the next generation of machine learning, the next generation of AI, and none of us have any idea of what's up next, what's coming next. I don't, nobody knows. So
right,
if you're nervous about what you see now,
this is where I get hung up. I get hung up. So we accept there's the potential for more extreme expressions than ever, like if you in any direction.
Yeah.
And we accept that over the course of any individual or group of individuals' series of decision making, whether it's a group of people working together at Tasty Trade or just me walking down the street or the entire nation of America, everything, that we're all constantly capable of creating good outcomes and bad outcomes.
Sure.
And that the idea is to be resilient in the bad outcomes and recover quickly, and to take advantage of the good outcomes and harvest them and all the sort of traditional cliched sort of personal advice, right? But if the outcomes are super extreme, it's more difficult to recover from a really extreme negative, I guess is my point. Like that I can tolerate a bunch of small negatives, or I can tolerate a bunch of small positives. And I can even tolerate a big positive, but it's not everybody's equipped to deal with an extreme negative.
Yeah, that's the last thing I worry about. I mean, having lived through many crashes and things like that, I, you have to
Because
worry
you think
about
people
this.
are more resilient to the extreme negative than we believe.
Yeah, sure. Sure, they definitely are because people ultimately, and I say this all the time, you have to worry about the things that you can control. Like you can't worry about the things that you can't control. So we could sit here, we could talk about the next generation of this and that scares us and all this stuff, but you have to really think about the things that you can control, and which is your voice, your vote, all that kind of stuff, and your conflicts, your own intelligence, all that kind of stuff. You can't worry about the stuff you can't control. You can't worry about the stuff, next generation machine learning, next generation of tech elite, all that kind of stuff. You know what? That's just a waste of life. That's like what we do in the trading business. We don't worry about the macro stuff because we can't control it. We worry about the opportunity that's in front of us on the stuff that we can control. It's so much more powerful. Like people get all hung up on, and they sit there and they debate, and we have all this ridiculous, back and forth yakking up about stuff that nobody has any control over whatsoever. So it's just background noise. Just worry about the stuff you can control, and don't worry about the 4 standard deviation or 7 standard deviation outlier move that AI takes us down a black hole that we can't ever get out of. I don't worry about that for a second. I worry about the fact that we have terms now that don't really mean anything, like corruption. We have terms now that don't mean anything, like intelligence. You know, we used to say somebody was intelligent, and then they actually were.
Exactly. Exactly.
I know. I know. I know. I know. That's the scary thing.
That's the whole thing. That's my whole problem.
Yeah, I know.
All right, enough. The real good. We only have a couple minutes, but did you see these Trump headlines regarding the war in Russia?
No.
Anyway, there's some rhetoric about going into discussions with Putin and making a deal and blah 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 blah. Have you been trading oil at all, whether it's around the Middle East rhetoric or the Russia
No.
rhetoric?
I mean,
Do you trade oil based on either the Middle East or Russia
no,
ever?
no, never. I mean, oil's down big today, but down almost $2, 3%. But it's I don't
And,
I have no position on an oil right now because the implied volatility is too low for me.
and you wouldn't say, and you don't think, I mean, I guess I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but I would argue that the headline from the Trump rhetoric regarding the negotiations with Putin on Ukraine is causing oil to go lower.
I don't
And you
know.
would say maybe, maybe not. I understand.
I would
know what you're going to say.
I would say what's causing oil to go lower is the fact that oil was up for the last 4 or 5 days in a row, and it's just pulling back. But that's just me. I don't care about the news. I don't read that stuff. It doesn't mean anything to me.
Does integrity mean anything as a word, by the way? Speaking of words,
it means something
how intelligent
to me.
And corrupted are being.
It means something to me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't do business with people that I don't where I don't feel like where I'm not confident in the integrity of the counterparty. I come from a trading background. The counterparty was my life. I don't do business with people where I don't trust the counterparty or I don't feel like the counterparty has integrity. And so people ask me all the time, they go, well, why don't you like this administration? Why don't you like Trump? Look how great he is. And I'm like, I don't trust people and I don't do business with people where where their integrity and their ethics are at question, period.
Mm-hmm.
That's the whole reason.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree with that. I mean, you and Warren Buffett, it must be a Midwestern thing, even though you're from New York.
Well, I'm pretty much from Chicago now. I've been here 40.
I mean, you're an honorary Midwesterner at this point. I mean, if they don't let you in now, I don't know what you got to do.
I served my time. I got my green card. Okay.
And you serve your coffee.